you ready to explore exciting careers in neuroscience and neurotechnologies? Then join me, your podcast host, Dr. Milena Krastenskaya, or simply Dr. K, and my amazing guests on the Neurocareers Doing the Impossible podcast. Discover what it takes to turn the impossible into reality. Tune in now to a thrilling episode number 85. Dear Neurocareers podcast listeners, welcome to another captivating episode of our podcast. Are you ready to explore the fascinating intersection of applied neuroscience, leadership, and personal development? Today, we have the privilege of introducing you to Professor Justin James Kennedy, a TEDx speaker, esteemed Behavioral Neuroscience Professor, and a driving force behind building a global community of applied neuroscientists. Justin's journey is nothing short of remarkable. Armed with a PhD and a wealth of experience, he wears multiple hats, including that of an academic and executive coach, a PhD supervisor, researcher, and author. He is a true neuroplastician, reshaping minds and guiding individuals towards cognitive excellence. With a profound passion for understanding the human brain and behavior, Justin's expertise transcends academic boundaries. He is a faculty professor in neuroscience at universities in Switzerland and the UK, exploring the intricacies of what drives peak performance and well-being. As a leadership coach, psychologist, and public speaking coach, Justin's work is deeply rooted in neuropsychology research, offering his clients insights that lead to enhanced cognitive performance and neurological resilience. In addition to his academic pursuits, Justin is a co-founder of the Institute of Organizational Neuroscience, ION, a global leader in applied neuroscience. ION is on a mission to transform the business world by bridging the gap between science and organizational excellence, all while fostering a thriving community of applied neuroscience. So join us in this episode as we dive into a thought-provoking conversation with Professor Justin James Kennedy. Discover the profound impact of applied neuroscience on leadership, coaching, and personal development, and explore the exciting journey of building a global community dedicated to unlocking the full potential of the human brain. Welcome, Justin. It's a great pleasure to have you today on our podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Milena. It's exciting to be here.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us. And can you please give a brief introduction of what you do, what is your main area of work, and also where you are joining us from? Because people are joining our podcast from all parts of the world.
I'm currently on the Bavarian Alps outside Switzerland on the way to Munich. We are spending the winters here and we're spending the summers in Croatia and hopefully on the way to Barcelona in November. But anyway, that is my multi-base life at the moment, which is great. The work that I'm doing at the moment is expanding the discipline of the neuroplastician and the community at the NPN Hub. So NPN Hub NPN is short for neuroplastician, but I also have academic responsibilities and I have a coaching practice and I'm interested in networking with experts like yourself, Milena. So thank you for having me here.
Yes, thank you very much for your introduction. It already sounds exciting with all your travels you are doing. And neuroplastician, NPN, what is that? Can you tell a little bit more?
There is a lot of people in the environment of applied neuroscience, Milena. A lot of people that are not staying true to the science. And I work with many organizations and I supervise a cohort of PhD candidates. And we were sitting around one day discussing the application of neuroscience into various individuals' work. And someone said, we're all actually in the game of applying neuroscience. And everybody said, yes. Somebody else said, well, that makes us all neuroplasticians. And the light went off, Melina. Before you know it, we've built an app, we've registered the trademark, we've built a discipline, we have defined an advisory board, we've brought on experts in the field around applied neuroscience. We really have got a community who apply neuroscience through a non-clinical, through a academic lens to build the application into leadership, into coaching, into education, consulting in all these environments. So it's really become an exciting place. And started out as a tennis club for all these PhD candidates, but it's become Wimbledon. And it's a very exciting environment, and we're having some really cool conversations. We had a roundtable with Michael Mersnich, who is known as the father of neuroplasticity, when he defined that neuroplasticity happens in the adult brain. And we had conversations with the likes of Paul Zak, whose work has been very useful in looking at the application of oxytocin. So we are not stepping in the ring as academics, even though we have some of these great conversations. We're stepping in the ring as pracademics, looking for practical tools, professional opportunities, how we can help clients to improve their well-being, to improve their performance, to improve their relationships, and everything else in between.
Thank you very much. For those who might not heard yet about what is applied neuroscience, how would you define?
Applied neuroscience is sitting on the shoulders of academics and using that information to build practical tools that influence behavior in the field, in people's lives. So an example will be looking at a person's relationship with sleep and understanding how they are not functioning, what is happening with their anxiety and the higher levels of neurotransmission that are causing that overexcitatory activity, looking at what we can do to change behavior so we can change the neurotransmission, so that we can change their sleeping habits, as a simple example. So we're really behavioral scientists looking at neuroscience through a academic lens, specifically on what causes neuroplasticity. Elena, does that make sense? Is that a good enough answer?
Yes, I think it definitely makes sense. And we see that there is an increased interest in applied neuroscience in the community. Why do you think is the reason behind that?
I think it is because people are hungry for knowledge that can be applied. And there's a lot of snake oil merchants and a lot of spin doctors and lots of pseudoscientists out there. And there's also a lot of people that actually want to understand the science. So we're finding that it's useful to give people a walled environment where they know that the people that they're speaking to are staying close to the science, they're reading the literature, they are understanding the protocols, and we can then help people effectively build tools that ensure behavior change, because we are behavioral scientists and practitioners and coaches that are interested in helping people sustain new habits that build new behaviors. So we're really interested in helping people change their behavior in whatever form that might be, from relationships to nutrition to fitness to work efficacy to performance and everything else in between, Melina.
And where does neuroplasticity comes in this process? How does it influence this behavioral change?
So neuroplasticity happens at any point in the learning experience. Whenever there is new stuff coming in, the brain goes into a flexible protocol to process that information electrically, anatomically, chemically, so that it can sustain the new information. So neuroplasticity is, as you would agree, it's any learning activity, any new activity that is going to be embedded into the hard drive of the brain. So in our environment, the application of neuroplasticity is to use the knowledge about how the brain processes information, how the brain learns, and help clients understand what works and what doesn't work when they're trying to change or learn or sustain new habits that will influence the well-being and the performance. So we're interested in staying true to the science, but we're interested in building simple tools that clients can use to be more effective in whatever environment they're learning or they are leading or they are growing.
Yes. So, in terms of that, what are the main applications?
It's a great question. I mean, it's a really big question because it could be anything. The environments that work really well. A lot of the practitioners are coaches. Many are consultants or educators, some neurofeedback specialists, some therapists, some counselors, and practitioners in general that are interested in understanding, well, what actually is the difference that makes the difference? So we're looking, okay, what is the brain doing during this behavior change experience? What does the brain do to change behavior? And what does behavior do to change the brain? So we're looking at this dual highway, as I like to call it, where the brain and behavior interact. And as you well know, it's not a clean highway. There's emotion. There are other people. There are environmental factors. It's a jungle rather than a highway.
Yes, and you mentioned several areas of application. For example, you mentioned leadership. What are other areas that we can apply this knowledge for?
The best thing is to think of an example. I mean, easy examples are nutrition and diet and weight and exercise, because that's an easy one to discuss. I mean, we could look at relationships and we can look at decision making and we can look at mental fitness and we can look at sleep. But let's just focus on one, and we can always illustrate it with other examples as well. So when it comes to nutrition, we're living in an age of excess, as I'm sure most people don't agree. There's not much starvation going on anymore. There is probably not enough starvation. In fact, there's a lot of work going around on the benefits of having many pauses in your diet and looking at how that benefits the microbiome. So if we're looking at the neuropsychology of diet, it's nice to eat. So when you eat, you get this endorphin release of, this is nice, I should do more of it. And you tend to eat more, and also you tend to eat the wrong things. And there comes to a point where you say, okay, this is not working for me. I'm putting on weight, or I'm getting these sugar cravings, or I'm just not feeling as healthy as I would like. So at this point, you would then potentially speak to a nutritionist or a personal trainer or a physician. One of the people would be a neuroplastician. So a neuroplastician will help you look at how your behavior is influencing the brain and how your brain is influencing your behavior. So in the nutrition example, the brain is designed to want to eat carbs. It's a great source of energy. It processes quickly, and the sweeter, the better. So the brain loves this stuff. And, as a result, we don't really think it through. We just find ourselves at Dunkin' Donuts having a box of treats. And we realized post-event that this wasn't the best way of going about eating breakfast. So what happens then post-event, we say, okay, let me be more diligent, or let me start, feeling guilty about it. And then starts the whole cycle of knowing how the brain shows up, and then knowing how the mind shows up in response. There's some great work done by Paul Zak. I don't know if you know Paul Zak, many know, but he's done some great work through the lens of neuroeconomics, looking at system 1 and system 2 and how that shows up in the brain. So what happens in the brain, system 1 is that initial pre-conscious trigger. So when it comes to eating, when you see the cake or you see the bottle of wine or whatever your go-to treat is, you don't think, do I want it? You don't think, do I need it? You simply lust after it. And by the time you've decided if you want it or not, it's already too late. And then system 2 thinking clicks in, and you have to start saying, well, was this rational? Was this logical? So in between system 1 and 2, there is an opportunity for you to rewire the way you show up. So a good illustration of this is we had some dark chocolate in the fridge. So my go-to sweet treat is dark chocolate. Even just thinking about it, I want some. And if it's in the house, I eat it. And even while I'm saying it, I realize that I don't want it, because I know that eating so much sugar is going to be bad for my health and my weight and my general cognitive function because of the excess sugar. But if it's around, that system 1 struggles to let go of the chocolate. It happens for us. It's just the way our bodies are built. Our brains are designed to get as many calories as possible. So if I know that I don't want chocolate, I then need to put systems in place that make it difficult for me to want chocolate. So I've told my wife to hide the chocolate so that I don't see it, because I know if I see it, I'll crave it. So by her hiding the chocolate, I know that if I really want it, I can ask her to help me find it. But it doesn't hit me in the face, and that system 1 triggers in. So what the neuroscientist does is understand the mechanics of how this all works at the interrelationship with the gut-brain biome, or the gut-brain axis, as it's called, I think. And the neuroplastician helps the person look at what are the functions of the behavior that are going to make the brain plastic in response. So in that example, I don't want to never have chocolate, but I don't want to be forced by my brain's evolutionary bias to eat chocolate whenever I see it. Okay, so there's part of a discipline. So you can discipline yourself and you can be a grown-up and you don't have to eat every time you see it. But your brain's always going to be triggered because you like it. So working with a neuroplastician, you find ways in putting barriers or triggers or systems in place so that you don't fall over unnecessarily. So with the eating of chocolate example, I now have a system where if I really want chocolate, I have to go through the process of deciding rather than just stumbling over the chocolate and shoveling it away in the fridge. Now, if I want chocolate, I have to think, okay, do I really want it? And I have to go convince my wife that she must give it to me. So it becomes a complicated task. It becomes a cognitive decision-making process. And it's about building those new habits in place that then block those ion pathways, if I may cheat by speaking about the neuroscience of it. But it is about blocking those neuropsychological pathways and the emotional noise that comes with it. And so that is just a simple example of how you can build tiny habits in, and how the neuroplastician is a skilled practitioner to help you build those systems so that when you notice those neurological triggers, you can do something about it rather than just default into system one, and you can rather be more cognitive and decisive and intelligent around the choices that you make. So I know that was a bit verbose, but did I get to the point, Melina?
Yes, you absolutely did. And very good that you mentioned what neuroplasticians do, how they can help people. And my question is, so what do future neuroplasticians learn while they're going through this neuroplastician program? What is the process of educating them and for them building skills to provide this type of services to people?
It's a very complicated question because what we have done, we have built a community at the NPN hub, NPN being short for neuroplastician, because neuroplastician is a big word. Neuroplastic IAN at the end is the best way to remember it. So that npnhub.com functions as a community for dialogue and discussion, as I mentioned. Within the institute at ION, we have an advisory board that helps us manage, govern the discipline of the neuroplastician. So in the governance of the competencies, we make sure that we are keeping true to the science, and we also vet training providers to ensure that when they deliver programs, they can qualify their graduates as neuroplasticians, assuming that are in line with the competencies that the advisory board has set. So in the NPN Hub, it's a community. In the Institute, we govern the discipline, and we have relationships with many training providers, coach training providers, neurofeedback specialists, educators, and other practitioners that offer training in applied neuroscience, so that when their graduates qualify, they become neuroplasticians based on the competencies they have learned. So ourselves, we don't offer training, but there are a pool of training providers at institutes and universities that we have partnered with, and we're looking for more. So please, anybody listening to this who has a training institute and is interested in collaborating, npnhub.com.
Thank you very much. And we will add all the pertinent information also into our podcast notes for our listeners to follow the links and to learn more. And now my next question is about you. How did you get into the field of neuroscience and neuroplasticity? What prompted you to join this field?
It's a very complicated story, but here is the short version of the truth. Not the whole truth, but it is nothing but the truth. So, in my education, in my 20s, I was studying to be a psychologist, and for whatever reason, I bought a motorbike, and I was driving down a road, and I realized that I should buy a helmet, because this is in the 90s. It didn't really matter so much if you had a helmet. I was living in South Africa. So I went off and I bought a helmet, and lo and behold, a motor car came around the corner, crossed the road, and smashed into me and sent me off the bike into a flick-flack into the middle of the road. The driver was a drinker who was over the limit, and I ended up in a subdural hemorrhage, causing a coma. So even though I had the helmet on, it still wasn't a good enough helmet. So I ended up recovering from the coma, and I had to walk, and had to learn to talk and how to think things through. It was a very fuzzy time, Milena, and part of the process really was learning how to control my emotions. They were all over the place. And what I found was that it was very difficult for me to find a sense of control. And the control that I found that really helped was getting that emotional control back, because it helped me then, okay, say, let me try and focus back on walking now, or let me take a moment just to calm and find the right words that I'm trying to find. So the emotional dial that I used to call it in my mind, it was very useful way to be able to control the amount of information that was getting in the way. So that was very useful in my personal journey. I never went on to finish my master's in psychology, but I got interested in the application of neuroscience because I didn't understand why my brain wasn't working anymore. I mean, it just wasn't doing what it used to. So I thought, what is not working? What is working? What can I improve on? So I got really interested in the concept of neuroplasticity, and to think about what can I do differently to build back those neural pathways so that I can be functional again. Now, sometimes I still miss words and I still have a slight limp on the one leg, but I'm pretty much back on track. And I got really excited about this and ended up doing a PhD in the application of this work. It led me into getting a professorship with the school that I was working, building a PhD program in organizational neuroscience. So I've done some publishing around organizational well-being neuroscience. There's a chapter in a textbook in the UK for those who want to read academia around organizational well-being neuroscience. I've also written this story up in a book called Brain Reboot, and the story is well written. I had a good editor, so it's much well explained, better than I've explained it now. But it got me into conversations, Milena, with other people. And in the conversations with the PhD candidates, we realized that there is a need for people who are serious about the science to be skilled in facilitating neuroplasticity. So the application of neuroplasticity is understanding how the brain as a machine processes information and how you can use the knowledge of how the brain functions, specifically in terms of neurotransmitters and speaking around what are those pathways around dopamine and oxytocin and acetylcholine and many others. And what we have found as neuroplasticians, if you understand how things work under the bonnet, you can then ensure the client applies the right kind of behavior to change the opportunity at hand. So the story that I said, my opportunity was not to eat excessive chocolate, and putting in the little habits of not being able to find it when I was in a craving mode, but putting pathways in place so that I had to first become logical and rational and able to convince my wife that I really wanted some chocolate rather than just jumping into the fridge and grabbing bars and shoveling them unnecessarily. So that was the journey from my experience. Being interested to share with people, this is what I've taken from my experience. This is what you can do to reboot your brain, which is actually the title of my book, Brain Reboot. And what you can do to reboot your brain's automatic pathways, that's system one, as Daniel Kahneman calls it, how you can catch those triggers and you can use your system two to make sure you do something different rather than just acting upon reflex. So that was a quick dive. I hope that made sense.
Yes, yes, it was a challenging time, and definitely you are a great example of how our nervous system can reboot itself, can reorganize. Thank you very much for sharing that. And also, what I noticed from your journey that not only you were involved in academic work, yes, and doing your PhD, working with organizational neuroscience, but you also pursued an entrepreneurial career as well. Yes, you established your institute and you are providing your coaching services and now also working with the neuroplastician community. What prompted you to explore yourself in that entrepreneurial realm as well?
I couldn't get a job, Melina. That's why. No, I'm teasing. The environment of academia is very. I mean, it's very structured. It's very it's very bureaucratic. That's how systems work. Um, and I didn't really find myself in that environment. I mean, I do some PhD supervision, which is um, a little bit less bureaucratic. Um, I have worked with organizations, and the institute was really built as an institute for organizational neuroscience. So I'm interested to understand how to organize the science so that it is practical. And that's what happened with the NPN Hub. So my interest in the application is what I'm really all about. And what is interesting to me in that space is about having the space to be creative. And I think that is so important for the felt sense of well-being in your work. And I find it so valuable to have that dopamine spike on when I have this new epiphany and I turn it into a thing, especially working with colleagues. I'm quite collaborative and building this whole neuroplastician discipline. It was an idea and now it's a thing. And it doesn't become a thing because I was just managing these ideas in my mind. It became a thing because we scrummed down together and we built an institute. We put together the requirements for the discipline. And now we've got like really cool people engaged, like you, for example. We're going to hopefully have a conversation with you in the Indian Hub about your work. We get everybody queuing to be involved. So it'll be a great conversation. So it's about that relationship between entrepreneurship and having the space to do fun stuff. Milena, I think that is important for me professionally, so that it feels like I'm having fun, not going to work.
So for you, it's very important to apply your knowledge, make it practical, make it possible to be used by people in the community. In terms of that, there are many questions that our listeners are asking, people who are graduating from neuroscience disciplines. They are asking where can we find ourselves, not necessarily in academia, but maybe in the applied neuroscience field.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have recommendations or any suggestions where they can find themselves?
So the good news for your audience is that we have a solution. We have built a community of practitioners that understand the science. So most of your listeners will understand the science. And well, I hope they do. That's what you are hoping to ensure, that they understand the science. And I'm interested to speak to these people so we can show them how they can apply that within the context of non-clinical and non-academic environments. So the neuroplastician is a non-clinical practitioner and is a person who understands behavior change through the lens of neuroplasticity. And if you understand the science, you're going to be very skilled at understanding how that works in terms of behavior change. So if you're a neuroscientist by training, you will understand, by a silly little example about nutrition, you will understand what happens when there is poor sleep hygiene and how that influences cognition. You will understand what happens to the brain when there is no exercise to cause that heart rate variability to be functional. You will understand what happens to the default mode network when there is heightened levels of self-doubt and imposter syndrome kicks in. So a lot of these things are opportunities to speak to academics and how they would like to maybe become pre-academics, where we show them the practical and the professional applications of their expertise. So that is a great opportunity to have those conversations. So that would be something fun to do in the future as well, Milena.
Yeah, thank you so much. And what are your future plans? Where do you see this neuroplastician specialization, let's say 5 or 10 years from now?
It's kind of like, what do you think will happen once you've let the cats out the bag? It'll just be lots of cats. I don't know. The idea, Lenena, is we didn't really plan it as well as that. It kind of was just an organic idea. It was a tennis club, and now it's Wimbledon. And behind that joke is the need that is happening in the practitioner and in the organizational context. People want to understand the science, and they want to make sure it can be applied so that behavior change sustains. So what will happen if we keep on going like this? What will happen? I imagine, I hope, we will see that this discipline finds its footing in the same way that coaching once was something you only did with a whistle and a cap on a field. And now coaching is something you do in the boardroom or in the professional environment. So maybe the neuroplastician will become a subcategory of coaching. Maybe it will become a standalone environment where neurofeedback specialists or therapists or educators can all use their knowledge and apply neuroplasticity and then become a certified neuroplastician. So that on the website in PNUP, there's an easy way to go through the process of becoming a certified neuroplastician at a few levels based on your levels of expertise. So we're very interested in growing the community and growing the rigor of the certification and the discipline. So in 5 years' time, I think there'll just be more of us. I think that's all that I know will happen. But, it's hard to do that, Melanie, because it's so easy to get swayed away from the science. I mean, a lot of coach training institutes started out with good intention. They knew enough about the science. And before you know it, they're selling the neuroscience of creativity and intuition as an artist. And as you know, creativity and intuition as an artist is hard to define neurologically. And selling someone a course to become an expert in this is very, very dangerous, because the science doesn't give us specific protocols to say what is intuition. So you run into danger selling stuff that doesn't keep the science at the center of the conversation. So part of our job is to make sure that we don't get strayed off the path. And we have an advisory board of some really interesting people, some academics and some well-respected professionals who don't have any skin in the game other than to make sure that we don't become neuroscientists of NASA trying to land on the moon of the mind, because that'll sell. We don't offer any training. We are simply collaborating with a community who want to build the discipline, Elena.
Thank you so much. Yes, that was my another question. How do you keep the real science behind what you are doing? And you already replied to that you have an advisory board. And yeah, it's true.
I mean, it's not that simple, as you know. I mean, a little bit of science is a dangerous thing. And a lot of science makes you very much an expert in a very small environment. So being a academic scientist, what is a neuroplastician? It is the ability to understand enough science so that you can apply it towards ensuring behavior change. So that's the sweet spot, and knowing enough of the science and being able to apply it in an intelligent and effective way towards behavior change.
Thank you so much, Justin. It was a great pleasure speaking to you. As we are nearing the end of our podcast, do you have anything you would like to share with our listeners?
I think what I would like to say to your community, Milena, is that thank you for being part of Milena's community. There is not enough good science out there. There is a lot of good scientists out there, but it's not very easily accessible. So this podcast is making it very accessible. And those people who want to access the academic side of how this is all working through the lens of neuroplasticity would be really great to have those conversations and share with you how to become a neuroplastician, how you can support us in the way that you are, Milena. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Justin, for all your kind words and support. I'm sure our listeners will be very curious to explore the neuroplastician opportunities. And of course, I wish you all possible success on your journey and also on your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Milena.
Dear NeuroCareers podcast listeners, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the entrepreneurial world of neuroscience and neurotechnologies. I hope you've been inspired by the stories of those who are turning groundbreaking ideas into impactful realities. If you are looking for more guidance on succeeding in neurocareers, book a free consultation with me, your podcast host, Dr. K, at the Institute of Neuroapproaches. So, what are you waiting for? Let's navigate the path to success in the world of neurocareers and make the impossible possible together.